So good afternoon and good morning, wherever you are in the art world. Tonight, we are having our wonderful, extraordinary Michael Klein, who finally, after many years, many months, we have had our first art talk. Finally, we are we're discussing and about one wonderful essay that you made on our magazine, the Art Talk magazine, and which is, again, very inspirational. It's one of our, the beginning of many more that we will discuss every week, and all your future art projects that we can't wait to hear. Welcome,
Good.
Michael. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a portrait done in 1957 of Grace Hardigan in her studio. The photographer is Gordon Parks. He was commissioned by Life magazine to actually go to a number of studios. There's also one of Helen Frankenthaler. And this was part of an exhibition that just closed. I got sort of involved with Grace Hardigan several years ago because of a collector friend of mine who was involved and friends of hers. And she had just passed away in 2008, and I was very intrigued and wanted to do an exhibition with her, a kind of memorial exhibition.
Mhm.
And I proposed it to a couple of places, and I kept being told no. And unfortunately, as my mother once described me, I'm like a dog with a bone. I will not let go. So I began to investigate further and got more involved with her work, and finally met a collector whose mother had been Grace's friend and also short-term art dealer in Washington, D.C. in the early 60s. And he had inherited from his mother a number of paintings, maybe a total of 20 paintings and maybe 20 collages.
Mhm.
At the same time, I had just met a friend who was starting a new art fair in Miami. And he said, let's do something together. And I said, what about a Grace Hardigan show? And he said, that's fantastic. So we organized an exhibition from this collection in 2015. And it was the first time these works had been seen in 50 years. And the response was very positive. We tried to, after that, to tour it, and we got no's again. Except for one museum 2 years later in Orlando, Florida, that said, no, I want to do that. So we did the Orlando show. Which also got rave reviews. And then my friend Ed Christie says, what the hell are you doing with Grace Hardigan? I said, I'm trying to promote it. I'm trying to move things along. I'm trying to make some things happen. She's an important abstract expressionist and an important artist. And I think it's time that people start recognizing. And he said, well, let's get going. So we got a painting from the collection. It went up for auction. It did extremely well. And then he said, from that, we're going to do a solo show and please write the essay, which I did. The show did very well. They sold, I think, 3 paintings so far. There are lots of interest. It got reviewed in several newspapers. And that's sort of been the Grace Hardigan adventure. My dream now is to, one, find a museum to do a Grace Hardigan retrospective. She has never had one. And also to do a new monograph. And I'd like to do it on themes. For example, I'd like to follow her career through all the figurative paintings that she made. She was an ardent figurative painter, even though she was also an abstract expressionist. In fact, the first paintings that were sold in 1953, one is called the Persian Jacket, and that was bought by MoMA. And the second one is called the Greek Girl, which was bought by the Walker Art Center. I want to do the book. I want to do a chapter on the collages. I want to do a chapter on, she was fascinated, interestingly enough, with storefronts. They sort of existed for her as a kind of ready-made still life. And there are lots of paintings from the 50s all the way up until near her death, where she's looking into stores and storefronts, because her studio was always in an urban area. She started out her career, she was originally from Newark, New Jersey. She started her career working and living in Lower Manhattan. So the storefronts on Orchard Street and all of that were of interest to her. And then eventually in the mid-60s, she moved because she fell in love with a scientist, and she moved to Baltimore, Maryland. But she was also in downtown, and she would also pass shop windows and did a lot of paintings that represented those. In fact, I just was offered one recently, which looked like it was a Russian furrier, 2 beautiful figures in fur coats. So that's been the Grace Hardigan story. It sort of goes on and on and on because, as we all know, the women of abstract expressionism. Here is a bunch of images that I collected for the Miami show, which has showed Grace at work. The the one on the far upper left is her in her studio in New York City, like most artists, living very simply with a pot of coffee. Frank O'Hara, who was one of her best friends, who was both a poet and curator at MoMA. Classic scene at the Cedar Bar. You'll see Frank O'Hara and Grace is to the right in that kind of page boy haircut, and between her and Frank is Larry Rivers. And in fact, I've always thought that the person with the mustache, I always thought that was David Smith. I could be wrong. One of my favorite pictures is my heroine, Peggy Guggenheim, sitting with one of her dogs in her house, where she just acquired this giant painting of Grace's called Ireland, which is now in the Peggy Guggenheim collection in Venice. And unfortunately, they never show it. I don't know why. It's huge and spectacular and really quite wonderful. Can you do another picture? Yeah, there's a close-up of that.
Beautiful.
This is one of the paintings that was in the Christie show. The Christie show, by the way, was at their new exhibition space in Southampton. Everyone has left New York City for the Hamptons. If you have any money, you bought a house out there and are now spending time there because the city is becoming really difficult to live in. If you notice in that, on the left side, you'll see this pinkish eye. This is called Gray-Eyed Athena. And she did 4 paintings on this theme. Athena, the goddess of justice and of power and of knowledge. And I think she was seeing herself in that role because, she became a university professor in Maryland and taught for many, many years, was the head of the graduate program. And I think that she was at heart in many ways a strong academician. And this is classic Grace, sort of at her best. That blue and that kind of magenta red are really colors that she was very, very, very attached to. Yes, this is this painting.
May I ask a question, Michael?
Sure, absolutely. Why not?
Are there any of these works in Europe?
No. And that makes me crazy.
I understand. Yeah, they are wonderful. They are really, really wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
And they are from the 60s now or 70s?
This painting is from 1961. This is called Snow Angel.
Yeah.
But everything that she painted was really a reaction to either a place she visited or some time or some event. I mean, nature plays a very strong role in her work. And you can see that if you're a kid, you know that the marks that you make while you're playing being a snow angel in the snow. She's done the one that the Peggy Guggenheim owned is called Ireland because she visited her ancestors.
Well, this is in Europe, at least. This one is in Europe.
But it's not shown. They don't put it up. That's
they don't show it. Yeah, so no one, because to be honest, Grace Hardigan was not really someone who I heard the name, but I had no idea of the images.
And here's the great irony about that. In 1959, MoMA put together an exhibition on abstract expressionism to travel Europe. And she was the only woman in the show, got rave reviews, except one tiny little problem. In the essay that Alfred Barr wrote for the catalog, he forgot to mention her.
Oh, no.
Terrible.
So she's not existing.
I read the essay twice. I kept thinking, did I miss something? I mean, I thought I was hallucinating. She got reviewed. She got great reviews in Zurich. She got great reviews in London. She got great reviews in Rome. And yet, when it came back to America, she was successful in that she sold many of her works that are all the early works are already in public collections. So it's hard to find works of this period, which is why this collection is so important. It's the last of the paintings that are around. This one sold. I'm trying to remember when did we just sell Snow Angel? I can't remember. Yes, I think this one sold and it's already over 1 million.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and I think that over time there'll be more. I think this is pushing more and more interest, and I would think that a young, enterprising, young female curator would jump on this and do it immediately. I'm waiting for that to happen. I mean, this old guy from New York is pushing this, you know, isn't there a young woman out there who wants to do this? Do you have another picture? I can't remember how much more I sent you. No, this is
I
a
think
different.
that was it.
That was it. Okay. So that was the Grace Hardigan project, to be continued. I'll see if I can raise the money for the book. I will see if I can launch um, an exhibition, a traveling exhibition. We had a curator. When the show was in Miami, a woman introduced herself. She was from the Tate. She was very keen on it, but nothing came of that. I think that I think that the European audience would jump on this work.
Yeah,
And I
they
think
will.
that
They
they
would.
should. So I need to find an ambitious young curator in Europe, whether it's in France or Germany. I would love, you know, I mean, I don't really care where, but
Maybe I know someone in France. Maybe.
great. I'm happy to
Yeah.
send you the catalog and you can pass it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she's from Switzerland, but she's now working in France, and she has a little museum, and she's a good curator. She did wonderful shows for the Kunsthaus in Zurich, and she might love it. She
Great.
might love it.
Great. Good. I'm happy to send
She's
you that.
not young, but she's very
Oh, I
into
don't- I mean,
the
I'm
sea.
not young either, but you know, it makes you or keeps you young.
Yeah, maybe.
So that's the Grace Hardigan story. I'm trying to think if there's anything else at the moment coming up directly for Grace. No, that's sort of it. But we'll see. You know, I'm a great believer. You throw the stone in the pond, and you see the ripples. I will see what happens after the summer with the reaction. And I don't, you know, I haven't not been out in the Hamptons. I don't know what the audience was, and I know there's an enormous interest in the work itself. We had some very good reviews, and so we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Impressive, really.
So this is a painting from 2004 by a painter who I adore named Catherine Porter. Catherine was somebody that I met many years ago through a dealer friend named Joan Sonnabend, a private dealer in Boston. Catherine began her career in the Boston area doing rather minimal style paintings, had a certain amount of success, continued into a more geometric abstraction. I think her kind of spiritual father is Kandinsky. She worked for a number of years with David McKee, then with Andre Emmerich. And what I like about Catherine is she's an artist. She's a painter. She's not seeking publicity, and she's not a socialite. She lives now in Maine. She was living for a while about 2 hours from here, so I could visit her. She's now moved to the coast of Maine, where she really loves it, and she's continuing to work. She is one of, I think there are now 12 artists in an exhibition that is opening at a new gallery in Hudson, New York. There's a lot of exchange now. The scene in New York is changing. A lot of dealers are leaving the city, finding other locations to work. Artists are leaving the city. It's difficult to find livable space, workable space. There are no more art supply stores in New York City. So there's a big change afoot, and it'll be very interesting to see where we are in 5 or 10 years. So Catherine lives in Maine, and I've put together a show called 95 North, which is a kind of fictional road trip that you might take in the summer to visit studios from New York City all the way up to Maine. My ex-partner is opening a gallery in Hudson, and he asked me to organize the first show. So this will be the first exhibition, and she's one of the artists from the Maine area that will be in this exhibition. Not this particular painting, but similar. Can we do the next? Yeah, this is a painting of hers I love. This is a shot in her house. This is called Notre Dame. She is a Francophile, proudly, and this was painted right after the fire. And it's very typical of the kind of work that she's making now. This is about 4.5 feet by 2.5 feet. Another painter who spends her summers in Maine is a woman who I've been following for many, many years. Her name is Catherine Lynch. She's originally from Pennsylvania. She was living and working in Brooklyn, New York for a number of years, and she and her husband have now moved to Catskill, which is upstate. She's delighted now to be out of the city, and she has big studio space and doesn't have to worry about moving her car in the morning. This is a painting called Mad Ocean, one of the views from her studio. She has a little shack that she rents on the Maine coast, and this is one of the pieces that'll be in the exhibition. I've been a fan of her works for years. She, again, kind of a painter's painter. I unfortunately am very traditional. I love painting. I will always love painting. I think that there's nothing better than a great painter.
Hey,
I
Michael.
agree.
Michael, it's funny because you were the one, obviously, who introduced me to Catherine Lynch. And as soon as this slide came out, I said, that must be one of Catherine's. I hadn't seen it before, but she really has such a noticeable look. And I would have guessed that was inspired by New England too. So she
absolutely.
She's fantastic.
The storms that comes up the coast and, you know, turns the waves into kind of monsters, and she is able to really capture all of that. She really is a kind of environmental painter in that she really is interested in where she's living and working. And we're going to do a solo show of her work, a kind of mini survey at the gallery next spring.
Excellent.
And there are views of the city, there are views of Brooklyn. I completely adore her. And I've known her, well, I've known her through 2 children, because when we met, she wasn't married, then she got married, then she got pregnant. Now that son has graduated university. So we've known each other a very long time.
And Michael, sorry, she's also part of...
she's also in the 95 North. These are all people in the 95 North, yeah. So she's representing Maine.
And September 18th, she will be there too?
September 18th, yes, she will be there too. She'll be at the opening, absolutely. Yeah. What's the next image? Ah, yeah. So along with the painting, each of the artists will have a color photograph of their studio, as if we made a studio visit, and we've got a picture of what we saw there. This is also a door named Frank Holliday. He is based in Brooklyn. His studio always looks like this. He's set it up a little bit. Very strong painterly abstractionist. And this will be sort of the beginning of the tour. So in my head, I started in Brooklyn and slowly made my way up through Manhattan and then over into, you'll see Richmond Burton in a moment, into upstate New York. And then from upstate New York, we finally get into Maine. So this will be, and each of the artists is contributing to medium or large scale works for the exhibition.
Fantastic.
Jonathan Barofsky, I'm an old friend of Jonathan's. In fact, the first article I ever published in 1976 was an arts magazine about Jonathan. We have a suite of drawings that I own that are going in the show. Jonathan actually lives in Algonquin, Maine. We used to go up and visit him, but I haven't seen him for 2 or 3 years. And we'll have sort of Jonathan, and this is typical of the kind of drawings he was making in the 80s. These kind of fanciful, dreamlike drawings. Each of them has a number attached. You see on the lower left, there's a number, and he just keeps a registry of all the numbers and all the pieces that he's made. This is 2,559,335.
And what do the numbers represent?
The number of works he's made.
Wow.
Yeah, he's quite prolific. He's amazing. He's like a machine. He's extraordinary. And you know, this the great part, I mean, all of these artists that I met in the 70s are now all in their 70s. So, you know, and he's now, Jonathan's probably in his late 70s. Catherine's is about 79. And their energy has not given way. And they just keep working and developing. He's done a huge number of public art projects around the world. And I remain a steadfast fan. I did a catalog for him and that's Catherine working in the studio. Oh. This is one of my faves. This is Robert Moskowitz. Robert is also an elder. He's one of the stops in New York City. He began doing these drawings of the Twin Towers and the various iconic buildings in New York City around 1980. I had bought a number of them from him and then sold them to various collectors. And I've been a fan for years, and I wanted him in the show, and his assistant sent me this installation shot, and I just went bonkers. I thought, oh my God, This is the work of, this is an 86-year-old man working. I mean, this is not like, you know, some 20-year-old, and they're spectacular. So he will be in the show. This is one of the paintings in the show called Empire. Very typical of the style, the silhouette of the Empire State Building, and some suggestion of atmosphere with that smoke to the left or cloud to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And this stands about, how high does it stand? It is 78 inches tall. So a little over 6 feet, or 3 meters.
Very tall.
This is by Saul LeWitt. Unfortunately, Saul has passed away, but I'm since this is all fiction anyway, I figured we could include Saul because he'd be on the way, because he used to have a studio in Orange, Connecticut. This is a piece that is owned by the Gene Heisteen estate. I'm manager of the estate. It was lent to a sculpture park in Sweden where it stands right now. And it's a concrete piece called, concrete blocks called 9 Towers, and he did this in 2004. There's Gene Heisteen. Unfortunately, Gene also passed away in 2013, and he has 2 pieces that'll be in the show, a multiple and a beautiful drawing. That's the multiple called Room with a Door. It's aluminum, stands about 10 inches high. Oh, I don't know why that's there. Oh, I know. That's the last image. So now we can talk about Basquiat. Okay.
There you go.
I'm like, wait, what? So that show will open September 18th, called 95 North. It will run until the 3rd week of October. Not to brag, but generally shows I've done have always been called. Somebody will check in and say, hey, can we take the show? Can we do it? So that might travel.
We will have it here, Michael.
Sorry?
Hopefully we'll be here too, in
Yes.
Europe.
Yes. This is a piece by Jean-Michel Basquiat. In 2015, as I was preparing the Grace Hardigan show, I was introduced to a body of work that was owned by a collector named Thad Mumford. Thad Mumford was an African-American TV producer who had been very successful because one of his programs was a very famous American program called MASH.
Mm.
And if you're not familiar with American TV of the 70s and 80s, this was the kind of sitcom that really did extremely well. It was on air for 6 or 8 years. Jean-Michel had gone to California in 1982 to work on his first show with Larry Gagosian. While there, he met Thad Mumford. They hit it off. They became buddies. And Jean-Michel needed cash. He was renting the studio from Gagosian. It was a studio he had just rebuilt in Venice, California. And so they made a trade. Mr. Mumford got 25 works on cardboard, various sizes and scales, and Jean-Michel got $5,000.
Wow.
Thad was not really an art collector, but he was supporting somebody who thought was important, so on and so forth. The pieces ended up in a storage locker. The storage locker also contained baseball memorabilia because Thad Mumford had also been the first African-American bat boy. It means that he worked for the Yankees, taking care of things. And so he had all this baseball memorabilia, all of which went into a locker, and he forgot about it. The locker went to auction many years later. The people were interested in knowing Mumford about the baseball memorabilia, knew nothing about Basquiat. Suddenly these pieces are in the world. They had never been documented, they hadn't been seen.
Mhm.
I was friends with, or am friends with Al Diaz, who'd been his business and, sort of partner in Samo for many years. And I had asked permission to go and look at these. They'd been in storage in New York City, and they said yes. And I asked Al to come and say, just tell me yay or nay. What do you think? Because I think they're legitimate. He said, absolutely 100% they're Jean-Michel. Well, time goes on. The people who have them can't really afford to take care of them. Long story short, I'm contacted about 6 or 7 months ago by a lawyer who now owns these pieces in a conglomerate. and would I be interested in selling them?
Mhm.
So we have been working on sales of these pieces, and more importantly, there will be an exhibition at the Orlando Museum, which is now going to be in February of 2022, of this body of work. There are 25 in total. I've written one of the essays for the catalog. It's going to be quite a beautiful book. We have a number of people who are contributing to it. And so this is one of the pieces called Crown that will be, yeah, classic Basquiat, that frenetic, energetic kind of frenzied style, always with faces, always with language, always with numbers, as if it's been literally pulled off the street like graffiti. Yeah, another one from that series. So these are, and they're different sizes. If you can go back to the previous one, I just want to give you some idea in terms of dimensions. So this one is in inches, 24 by 20 inches. So I think in centimeters, I don't know, it's 50 by something.
Mhm.
They're quite substantial, and they've all been beautifully framed and taken care of. And it will be a pretty remarkable show. Again, have not seen the light of day since they were made in 1982. In a public setting, I should say. And that's another one. This one probably is about 12 inches square. So they range in size. They went out and collected cardboard together, and then he made them. And somebody said, well, why do you think he worked in cardboard? I said, because no one would notice a cardboard going out of someone's house, but they might notice a big canvas. And Gagosian was eyeing that to make sure that he got everything he wanted for his exhibition. A collector of mine actually was at the exhibition that day, that year, 1982, and I have some quotes about what was going on there. This is called Batman. Another of these strange faces. This one is pretty amazing. I've always thought that a lot of these are self-portraits in different states of being, as he's sort of, either drugged up or not drugged up, or whatever mood that he's in. He's a very young man at this point. 1982, I think he's all of 22 years old.
Wow.
Maybe that's all. Yeah.
Mhm.
And again, the spotlight is on him from that point until 6 years later, until his death, and it doesn't go away. So he's forced to really produce, and he's sort of a showman and not a showman. And I knew him briefly because I was friends with Anina Nozai, and before I had my own space, she had gone on a business trip and asked me to sort of babysit the gallery, and I was there while he was in the basement working. What's next? Yeah. Classic, this kind of frenetic monster, again with the crown, clawing his way to the top.
Oh, very nice. And that was the last of the pictures that we had.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. So what's coming up then? So Basquiat will open in February, and then we'll see what will happen. The same lawyer that I worked with has a Pollock drip painting that, again, has never been seen before. And so we're having conversations about that exhibition and that book.
Mhm.
I'm doing Catherine Lynch in the spring at the new gallery in Hudson, New York. And then I'm hoping, Chris and I have talked about doing a more historic show. There's never really been a pop art sculpture show. And I want to do it's called Pop Art. What do they call it? I can't remember the title. Pop Art and Things or something like that. But I want to bring all the three-dimensional pieces that are made by pop artists, whether it's Lichtenstein or Marjorie Strider or Archwager, but a whole range of things. Chris, who was building and opening this gallery, when we were together, he worked for Archwager for 6 years, literally building many of those pieces.
Wow.
So this is a show I'd like to do, but I only will do it if we can collaborate with the museum, because it will require a catalog, and I really want it to be a first-rate exhibition. And there are a number of museums in this part of the world that I want to approach and talk to about, collaboration and seeing what we can do. So that sort of brings me into 2023, 2022 and 2023. With the Gene Heisian estate, we have a major project with the Tampa Museum.
Mhm.
They're going to do, they have a beautiful sculpture terrace. We'll show stone pieces on that terrace, stone and cast iron pieces. That'll happen in 2022. And then in 2023, there will be a separate exhibition of his early work of the 70s and 80s. And that brings us to 2023. And I haven't planned beyond that. So rest
You're in good company.
open an interpretation. But who knows? You know, you just don't know what's around the corner and what's coming up. I have been headhunted for a job with a foundation. They haven't gotten back to me yet. That will change everything, of course. I'll continue to do independent curatorial work, but you know, it'll be slightly different. So we'll see. I don't know at this point, but it's fun. It's all interesting. It's all fun, and that's sort of my resume.
Well, and we know you're going to come to Europe soon. We hope.
Oh my God, I can't. You have no idea. I'm desperate. I'm desperate. My only fear is that it's too soon yet, because you know I was thinking of going to Switzerland for Art Basel.
Yes.
I think it's not going to be possible because of travel restrictions, and also I think there's still countries that are closing. I mean, you could be in an airport and suddenly find out that the next country you want to go to is closed. The border is closed. I want to wait till things are much more open and maybe a little clearer. And then my partner and I have to go to Houston, so we're going to do that right after the show opens in Hudson, and that'll be a road trip. So that'll take about a week. So hopefully, I mean, you know, maybe by Christmas, it'll all be open. My dream would be to do it in January, because in the last, I don't know how many years, I've always had my birthday, which is in January. I've always had a big dinner party in London. So I'm hoping, keep my fingers crossed, that can happen again. But I would really like to get on the road with all these projects and talk to people and see what could be developed. I mean, they're all relatively easy to transport, so that's good. The Basquiat is very, very easy to move around, so we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think Basquiat would be wonderful, and we clearly have the interest from Erica on Grace Hardigan, which is lovely. And so, if anybody else has any questions for Michael, he's had an incredible life as a writer, as a gallerist, curator for the Microsoft collection, and clearly showing no sign of slowing down at all. Very much
No, I can't.
I don't know when you do all this. I mean, you do so many projects at the same time. And how do you organize yourself? How do you get to things
I have
straight?
I have a dining room table covered with stuff. My office is covered with stuff. It's all in my head. And
I know the head is okay, but then you have to put it down and you have to get it.
I don't know
directions.
I have to tell you something. The godsend is the computer.
Okay.
Without the computer, I'd be losing my mind, because everything I scan, everything goes in here, and I'm very good at filing things and organizing things.
Well, you're lucky you. I'm not so good organizing things like this. So
I had to, because I worked at Microsoft, and if you failed,
sure,
it would throw you out.
You got spoiled.
Would be good at bad advertisement.
Yes.
Yeah, lucky.
No, but I'm very good at logistics. I mean, Donald said, "Oh, we have to go to Houston," and he said, "I know you're going to plan the trip." I've already planned it. I've already got 2 dinners set up already. One with friends in Birmingham, Alabama, the other one with a dealer in New Orleans. So it's all done.
Michael,
How does it go?
Sorry, Erica, please.
No, in the US, I think it's easier to be a curator, but also a kind of dealer, and all these things together. In Europe, it's a bit, there's a little separation. Either you are this curator and you're working for museums, or you are a dealer. But this coming together, it's more complicated. I think the US, it's much easier.
When I started out in the field in the 70s, I was warned you had to decide either museum work or commercial. That has changed enormously. There's a lot of crossover. One of the things, and I was supposed to be a museum director, and I chose not to go that path. For me, And this is just who I end up working with. They either understand who I am and what I'm about, and a self-starter, and I get projects done. And some people love that, and for others it makes them crazy. So I avoid the ones that make it crazy, and I love and work with the people who really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It is and as things progress, I think it's going to be more and more difficult to separate out those two things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was interesting. One of the reviews of the Grace Hardigan show, the reviewer pointed out what he was appreciative of is the fact, yes, it's a selling show, but also it had a curatorial point of view. There was really an effort to put her in some place in history so we understand what she's about, where she's going, where she came from, and all of that. And I think it's really necessary. I think there's a lot of education that needs to go on. There was a critic named Judith Goldman who gave a talk many years ago and talked about the scholar dealer. And I feel very strongly about that,
Mm-hmm.
you wouldn't want to go to a doctor who didn't have the latest information, the same way you don't want to go to a art dealer who doesn't have the latest information. So.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do the research. Even when you sell things, you have to know where it's coming from, where it's going.
Absolutely,
The influence
you have to be able
you
to
should know something about the art, the artist, the background, and everything. Not just say it's a wonderful painting, just get it, buy it, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. No.
It needs more background. It needs more knowledge, and
understand the influences, where it came from, and why this particular picture, and what it represents, where it was done in their life. No, all of those things I think are crucial. And
yeah.
a serious collector wants to know all of that. You're bringing this amazing work of art into your life. It has a life of its own. So I think those are very important things. And dealers in the past, I mean, if you went to Andre Emmerich, he could talk to you at length about a work of art. He was not just going to sell you, oh, it's pretty, or you should get it because it's going to be worth more money next week.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and I feel very strongly about that.
Hey, Michael, I have a question. In regards to the 95 North show, I just spent weeks up in New England, in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Ogunquit, and those areas of Maine. And most of the galleries you go to are what you'd expect. It's beautiful landscapes, but pretty vanilla stuff, what would naturally come to mind to paint. How did you decide, and how did you work to find artists who are not doing the standard type of work up there? I'm impressed with what I saw today.
I am a maniac.
I know that.
I've already talked to Chris about next year's 95 North. I think it should be a summer exhibition that we do every year. And because I think there are more and more artists who are living up there. For example, Sean Scully is upstate. There are a number of people. Judy Pfaff is upstate. There are a lot of artists who are up there. The galleries, for the most part, have always been kind of regional, and have been, they're selling locally, and they're selling decorations in a way.
Exactly.
So it's a little tougher, and that's exactly what Chris did not want. He doesn't want a lot of little cutesy things. Yeah. He wants some really dynamic, really strong, and I agree with him. It would he wants work that either you love or you hate, and you want to have a conversation about that. So we've really been pushing the quality there. He was very determined that it be a certain scale, that it not be this kind of little cutesy thing that could go on the kitchen wall, but really something substantial. And they're artists. There are people up there, and some of it I knew, and some of it I discovered. I mean, most of these artists I've known for a very, very long time. So, this is so Alice Neal has a show at the Metropolitan Museum right now, a kind of survey show, and I had written this piece in March of 2010 with regards to another exhibition that had happened, because in my career, I started out in the Whitney program in 1974, and I was very shy then. And I thought, how am I going to get beyond this shyness? So I signed up to give tours at the Whitney. I was in the Whitney program. I signed up to give 2 tours on Saturdays and 2 tours on Sunday. And after giving public tours, you can't be shy anymore. I mean, you've got the public to deal with. And The two shows that were up while I was doing this, one was an Alice Neal, her first retrospective in 1974, and the second one was called American Pop Art, which was organized by Lawrence Alloway, who was a very influential critic, English-born and American sort of bred critic. And so this article, sort of a slightly nostalgic, talks about the 74 show and in my introduction, and things that I didn't know I could do. For example, I had questions about the work, and I didn't know that it was okay to pick up the phone, call the artist, and ask them a question. Because now, of course, I would do it instantly, and I'd have no fear about that. But then I didn't know what the protocol was. So this, Carolina and Francois saw this and said, let's reprint it. And I said, go for it. So now it's up, because with that show at the Met, which has got a huge fan base. I mean, it's just enormous, the number of people who've gone to see it. We went to see it about a month and a half ago. So that was quite enjoyable. And this is a portrait of Linda Nachland, the great American art historian, unfortunately passed away several years ago. And that's her young daughter, who's now grown up and has her own children. So that's how time flies. There's the great portrait of Warhol right after he was shot. And what else is there? Flowers. Yeah, this is John Bauer. Actually, I knew John Bauer because when I was he was director of the museum when I was in the Whitney program. Very smart, very interesting man. And actually, it would be nice for us to communicate today if we could, because he did a retrospective and a monograph on an artist that I'm also very interested in, that I hope one day to do a show with, whose name is Philip Evergood. Philip Evergood is a very interesting individual. He has a Polish father and an English aristocratic mother. He was educated in England, came back to America and became a kind of social realist, and makes extraordinary work that has completely disappeared. I mean, people really don't know the work or him at all. I have a dealer friend in Florida who owns 4 paintings. I own a painting over there. You can buy them for a song, and yet he's in major collections around the world. And he died in 73. He had no children. He had no estate. And the gallery that represented him had his archives, and all of those burned. So it's really a labor of love to kind of rebuild all his careers. If you go online and you look for his prints, you can buy a print for $200. Very, very interesting, very, very interesting artist. And again, one of my sort of obsessions. I just get obsessed and then I start collecting information and so on and so forth. So sort of like a wacky scientist. Anyway. So that was the Alice Neal story. Any questions?
Well, we all adore Alice Neal. I think she's a fantastic painter.
No, she's an amazing painter.
I mean, she gives so much. I can't put it right now, but yeah, I totally agree with you. I was so happy that I think I'm after you is my article, or before you, or after you is my article. I was, oh my God, I'm in such a good neighborhood in this Art Talk magazine. Wow, I was really happy.
Have you ever seen her? You know, she was interviewed on the Johnny Carson show in the 70s.
Yeah.
If you go to YouTube, you can find it. She's this sweet old lady, you know, she just sounds like your grandmother. And then she makes the most provocative, the most intense
really
of people. She really was extraordinary.
Yeah, she was.
Unfortunately, I never met her, but I mean, her work is just amazing. And it feels so right at the Met. It feels right at home. You know, it was exactly the right place to do that show. So I was very happy. And I really am grateful that you reprinted it. It was really, really kind of great.
Thank you to you, Michael, because I think it's a beautiful beautiful article. You know, and we are honored that you could be in our, in this edition of our magazine. Thank you.
The magazine is beautiful. The magazine is exactly what an art magazine should look like, which is about art, as opposed to advertising. You know, so.
And I think Francois chose incredible pictures.
No, you did. I
Yeah.
fell over when I got it. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. No, the whole thing looks, you know, it just looked fantastic. I've sent it out to all sorts of people. In fact, I just sent it this morning. I got an email from Xavier Hufkens, who's doing a drawing show of hers in Brussels. And I thought, well, you should see this. So I sent it to him.
Very nice. Thank you.
No, thank you. No, it's just great to, you know, to sort of spread the, as they say.
And we are waiting for the next one, Michael, for all of you on the
Well,
next.
there are two things, you know, that I'm sort of diddling with right now. One is an article on Robert Moskowitz, and because I didn't know, as I was doing some research, that one of his teachers was Adolf Gottlieb, who I adore, who also has been kind of pushed by the side. And the other piece is on the Calder show that I saw the other day at MoMA, which was extraordinary. I mean, one of the most beautifully curated. And the thing that I came away with was that not only was he influenced and interested in Miro's work, you can really tell from the way things are organized in the palette, but he was also interested in dance. I had my brother's girlfriend in high school was a dancer, and she was a student of Martha Graham's. And you could see the Graham gestures in a lot of these sculptures. And I want to talk about that idea of kind of the body in space, that very much is what he's dealing with. So it was, if you can see the show, you gotta see it. It's really quite nice.
I think there's also a show coming up in Berlin. I'm going to Berlin next Thursday, and on next Friday there's the reopening of the Nationalgalerie, Neue Nationalgalerie, and I think they also have a Calder show, as far as I understood. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, no, it's just amazing work, and just I didn't take pictures in the galleries, but I'm going to try to see if I can find some online. But it's really quite a beautiful show. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the Cézanne show, which I think was overhung and had no point of view. It was just like, you know, here's every Cézanne we can get our hands on, and then some. It just didn't feel right, except for one painting that was a profile of his son. That was an extraordinary picture.
But this is exactly the job of a good curator, not only to have good paintings or works, but also to put them together in a way that they give a new view on, I don't know, a work, an artist, a group.
Well, their job as a curator is to assemble, is to create a dialogue between the works of art, is to create a place where you kind of have, you're sharing in a conversation. You can't just stick a bunch of stuff up because it looks alike. And
yeah.
I mean, that was what was so beautiful about the Calder show. They had small works and large works and wall works and tabletop works, but they were all in harmony, and there was a kind of dialogue between them. And you got a sense of how the artist was thinking and working and piecing it all together.
Yeah.
You know, they had so many of those small watercolors of the bathers. You only need a few to understand that he was obsessed with this image. You don't need 100.
Right.
So that was the sad part about the Cézanne show. And that building is also a nightmare.
Okay.
It doesn't have any of the feeling of a museum. You feel like you've landed and you've entered a new terminal, airline terminal or train terminal. It was very weird. I mean, and I just was kind of shocked what they've done. And then huge expanses of wall space, unused wall space, painted black.
So where was it, at the MoMA or?
In MoMA, yeah, the new MoMA building.
Okay. You know, some years ago I saw a show of Beckmann.
Yeah.
At the Met, just the works in New York or in American collections. I think New York collection. It was a small show. It was so divine.
I went to see it. I went to see it 5 times.
Yeah, you saw it. I thought, oh my God, this is so
an extraordinary
spot. Yeah, fantastic. It just was fantastic.
Yeah. and it was really it was an absolute knockout show.
Yeah.
And it was Sabina Riewald did that.
Okay.
She's
Yeah,
the
it was.
daughter of John Riewald.
Yeah.
I met her at a symposium on Beckman a month later. Really good curator and just really knew. I mean, she just picked some of the best. And
yeah, and they were all masterpieces, one next to the other, but they also had this dialogue, as you said.
Exactly.
It was
No,
fantastic.
it worked very well together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, could I ask you one of, because you've been doing so many exhibitions, but which one would be the one that it's in your heart as a curator?
What a great question. I have no idea. Wow. In my heart?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the first one, and that's what popped into my head. The very first one I did, I was a graduate student, and then we took this it's called museology course, and it was a lecture given by a former curator director from the Art Institute of Chicago. Very nice man, very conservative. And after the class, I went to the head of the program and said, you know, it's nice to talk theoretically, but I'd like to organize an exhibition. And I was sure he was going to say no. He said, be my guest, do it. So I organized an exhibition called Four Artists, and it was a group show of 4 women sculptors: Jackie Ferrara, Mary Miss, Alice Aycock, and Alice Adams. I don't remember anything, whether there was an opening. I don't remember anything anymore. This goes back however many years. And the museum bought some of the Alice Aycock drawings. And next year, the school is celebrating the 50th anniversary of this art history program that I was in. And I'm on a committee with a friend of mine talking about student-run exhibitions. So I get to talk about because I sort of broke the ice. I was the first one who said, let's do this. And then other students said, well, Michael did this, can we do this? And so my friend Lucinda did a George Rickey show, and then they've gone on and on and on and on. So that's sort of the one in my heart, because it's the first one. Yes. You know, and I remember sitting, I had to do everything. You know, I didn't know how to do anything, but I had to do it all. And then I figured it all out. And sitting in my mother's living room, and the box had just arrived from the printer with the catalog. And she said, why so glum? And I was complaining about this and that and doing this and having to take care of that. And she looked at me, she said, you know, if it were easy, anybody could do it. And that was the end of my conversation. And I thought, she's absolutely, completely right. So that was the first one. I've enjoyed all of them. I mean, I've done all sorts of, you know, the bibliography now has 35 catalogs. So it's quite a lot. I was shocked when I saw the list, you know, when I sat down to put it all together. But yeah, it's been, but that first one was amazing. That was really very, very interesting. The only bad thing is we never took any installation shots.
That's what I was asking you.
And I don't know whether the museum has any. Now that we're going to have this symposium, I'm going to find out if somebody has, whether any records of it, if anything ever, you know, got recorded. I don't think so. I don't think so. And of course, for many, this was the first time these women were seen in a museum context. So, and they've all had.
It was in the 70s, or when was it?
76.
76. Wow.
A million years ago.
No. Yesterday.
Sometime ago. Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah, it was, let's see, because I was 24.